All right. Good evening, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you may be joining us today. I'm your host, as usual, for a day in the life of a cybersecurity professional. And today we have one of our important ladies, our queens in cybersecurity. She's trailing the blaze everywhere, and then so she's a trailblazer, so we want to make sure she make her own contribution, which she has been doing before, if you don't know her. So today I bring to you Dolapo Omonubi, who is a senior cybersecurity analyst. She's going to introduce herself more later. However, today she wants to take us through DORA, not Dorati, if that's the name you're looking at, but we want to talk about DORA regulation, as you can see on the screen. So I don't want to take her shine. I want to pass on the baton to her. So, Dolapo, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Said, for the opportunity, as always. Hi, everyone. My name is Dolapo Omonubi, and today I'm going to be talking about a day in my life, but I'm going to be laying more emphasis on DORA, which is Digital Operational Resilience Act. I have presented some slide in this PowerPoint presentation, and we're going to go through it. This is just a big background about myself. So who am I? What am I doing in the cyberspace, and how did I get there? So, like I said, my name is Dolapo. I am currently working as a senior cybersecurity analyst for a fintech company based in Malta and the UK. I've worked for this company now for close to 4 years, and I am responsible for their compliance program, for example, ensuring that the organization is in compliance with ISO 27001, PCI DSS, SOC 2 Type 2 report, and DORA as well. I am responsible for ensuring that we have a risk management process in place, assessing our risk and ensuring risk monitoring is in place. I started my cybersecurity career when I finished my master's degree and I didn't find a job in my studied field. So I studied petroleum engineering at the University of Portsmouth and engineering management at the University of Leicester. So I took that turning point to transition into cybersecurity, and I've been in the cyberspace for close to 6 years. But this is just a quick background about myself. Hopefully it can motivate someone to get into the cyberspace. So for context, we're going to be talking about cyber resilience, how cyber resilience is merged into DORA, Digital Operational Resilience Act, the statistic of cyber incidents in Europe, who does DORA applies to, the 5 pillars of DORA, what are the guidelines in terms of DORA, what is the RTS, the thematic review, how to prepare for a DORA audit. And I'm just going to run through like a practical ways on, how to do DORA, how to meet compliance with the DORA regulation, and we can take questions and answer. Yeah, so before I start, you can unmute yourself if you want to, or you can put like the information in the chat. So I just want to ask the question, what do we understand by cyber resilience? Or maybe we can say, what do we understand by resilient as a whole? And then relate that to cyber resilience, and what type of cyber resilience programs are we familiar with? I'm just going to make it like 1 minute. So if someone can, unmute themselves, or better still, you can put the answer in the chat and I can review it. Because I just want it to be as engaging as possible. Shall I pick someone on the chat? Okay, I think I'll just pick someone. Mr. Shea, are you on the chat?
Oh, yes. Can you hear?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Probably let me just first of all say something about resiliency. Resiliency, it could be in terms of, in my own term definition, could be something like you're resistant to something. You're trying to be resistant to a particular threat, for example. So in relation to cybersecurity, I would say when a network is resilient to an attack, it could be they have a good technology, they have people that are, technically sounded, or people who are, managing the controls to be put in place for a particular threat so that the network will not be breached. So, and in terms of technology, I could say to be resilient in terms of technology, there are companies who buy something like firewall, to protect themselves. They'll, get some other, software to protect them. They will enable some policies, they create some policies, and also they will have education for their staffs, educate them on if they see anything like suspicious, because if they have the technology in place, then the people are not educated in terms of when to notice when there's an attack or a form of an attack or a threat, then they could be breached. So all these things put in place will make the network of the company to be resilient to external threats. So that's what I could say about it.
Obviously, I liked what Mr. Shea said. Resiliency is basically saying, okay, a person's ability to actually withstand like a challenge or overcome challenges or hurdles, in life. Now, relating that to cyber resilience is basically saying, an organization's ability to withstand, recover, or respond to a cyber incident or a cyber attack or any cyber breach. So in terms of like policies or controls or technology that they put in place to do that would be business continuity planning, for example, or disaster recovery, also maybe backup policies or backup controls in place, fault tolerance, redundancy, like firewall, having load balancers to ensure that the organization can still operate. And in terms of the CIA triad of cybersecurity, cyber resilience lies in the availability side of things. So, availability means, ensuring that data is accessible or is accessible for an authorized person, is available whenever an authorized person wants to gain access to that data. Now, in a business context, they're assuring that, the business operation is available for their clients or internal employees. So let's say, for example, you want to log into your bank and obviously you can't log into your bank. Obviously, that means the organization is not even resilient, or they don't have a plan in place to ensure that every customer can log into their bank or have access to their banking information whenever they need access to. So according to IBM, is basically saying, an organization's ability to withstand or, recover from any cyber incident. And this is where DORA is actually derived from. So according to the European Union, the reason why they brought DORA in place is because they realized that there've been a lot of cyber incidences in the European financial entities over the last couple of years. For example, Bank of Ireland, Bank of Latif, they've had various cyber incidences, ransomware attacks, or data breaches. And for them to breach this gap, they had to ensure that they have a comprehensive guideline in place, and that's where DORA falls in place. And obviously, right now we're living in a digital world where we are all reliant on technology, and most of these financial entities, they focus more on capitals than operational resiliencies in their IT. So DORA is saying, we need to ensure that we have a stringent control in place to ensure operational resiliency across an organization. And DORA is saying, if you're not compliant with DORA as an organization, you're going to be fined, and also third parties will be fined. And DORA is actually built on, for example, these are some of the statistics that has happened over the last couple of years in Europe. So, for example, Ireland Health Services, they've encountered a ransomware attack. The Travel currency exchange has encountered a ransomware attack. British Airways as well as encountered data breach attack, etc. So all this allowed the European Union to ensure that they have like a strict guidelines and standard in place to breach this gap. Now, who does DORA applies to? So DORA applies to financial services within Europe. So from e-payment organizations to digital banking, even traditional banking as well, credit institution, as well as third parties who provide these services for them. So let's say, for example, you work for a financial organization, but they are heavily reliant on AWS or Azure cloud providers. These third-party cloud providers have to be compliant with DORA as well. So it's not just for the financial entity, but the people who provide services to these financial entities. Even cloud computing software, they have to be compliant with DORA. So the 5 pillars of DORA. So DORA is built on 5 critical pillars, which are risk management, ICT incident management, classification and reporting, digital operational resilience testing, managing ICT, third-party risk, and information sharing. So we're going to run through the different sectors or pillars of DORA. This slide is basically ICT risk management. So in terms of ICT risk management, DORA is saying, you know what, senior management must be responsible for the risk in your organization. You know, when you're carrying out risk management as a whole, we need the management to set the risk management strategy for the organization in terms of their risk acceptance level, their risk appetite, their risk tolerance. They have to assign someone who is going to be responsible for managing, identifying, and also remediating risk. It's not just a cybersecurity area, but it's a management type of thing. So it's basically saying governance in this area, and governance in terms of how the organization set up their ICT risk management strategy, their information security policies, their controls in place, technology tools. Management has to be involved in this process. And obviously, when you're talking about risk management, there are various risk management processes in place, which are, you know, identify your risk, assess your risk, treat your risk or remediate your risk, monitor your risk, and obviously always communicate risk. DORA is also saying that, you know, risk management should be involved in terms of people, process, and technology, ensuring that you have a risk awareness culture in your organization, and this would improve cyber hygiene within the company. The next slide is basically ICT incident management, classification, and reporting. So this area focuses on how we identify an incident and how we respond to an incident and how we monitor an incident. So one thing that will come in mind is ensuring that you have tools in place that can identify incidents, can detect incidents, and can respond to an incident. And also how you classify your incidents. What are the severity levels or severity scores for an incident? Is it a critical incident? Is it a medium risk incident? Is it a low risk incident? You know, we have to have policies in place. How does your SIM tool? So SIM tool is basically a security information event management, which basically correlates logs from various sources like your endpoints, your servers. So how does it operate? What type of controls are in place on your SIM? Also, they look out for policies, your instant response policies that you have in place. What are your, you know, various response platform, more like your ticket platform. So if, for example, I'm a user in your organization, I identify an incident, or maybe a phishing incident, for example, or a phishing email, right? How can I report that? So they need to know that you have a platform in place that that reports an incident, and then obviously it can be escalated to various department or cyber team to remediate those incidents. So they need to they are going to be looking at this in your organization. And DORA has also provided a guideline on how they want you to classify your incidents. And this guideline is built on 5 areas, which are operational, technology, reputation, financial data, and I can't remember the last one. All right, no problem. So I said, so I said that Dora is, God, I'm sorry. I'm kind of confused now. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to start this slide again so that everyone can understand what I'm trying to say. So this is basically how you identify, respond, and remediate an incident. And DORA's body, which is the ESA, has put in place a classification level on how an organization is meant to classify their data and incidents. And this classification level is based on, I think, 4 or 5 categories, which is based on operational risk, technology risk, financial risk, regulatory risk, and I think reputation risk as well. And they have a process on how a business would be able to classify an incident and how to report an incident. So, for example, if you look at the image, it says in #3, it says standard template for reporting incidents to relevant authorities. So these authorities are called ESA, and there's a process for reporting that incident to DORA. And the things they want to look out for within your organization is ensuring that you have a SIM tool that can identify, detect, and respond to cyber incidences within your organization. You also have, like, for example, a ticket platform. So let's say I'm a user in your organization and I'm seeing a phishing email. How can I report a phishing email, right? Maybe you have to liaise with IT or raise a ticket with IT. Let's say you use Jira as a platform for reporting or, speaking to people within your organization. They want to see things like that. They want to see that your users within your organization can report cyber incidences, and there are people within your organization who are responsible for remediating that. So they want to see, like, for example, if you're in the cybersecurity department, they want to see roles and responsibility for each members within your cyber department who is responsible for incident response. So if you have a dedicated SOC team, they want to see their roles and responsibilities. They want to see the tools in place. If you have EDRs, incident detection and response, they want to see those type of things in place. They want to see that you have policies. They want to see your logging policies. They want to see your auditing policies in place. And obviously, this will be backed by, the controls as well, not just policies, but ensuring that you have those controls in place that can log various incidences, that can, audit people when they access the platform or carry out certain activities on your SIM tool. For example, let's say Splunk, let's say I'm a SOC person and I use Splunk for remediation, treating certain incidences or identifying it. So, and maybe, for example, an incident was indicated on Splunk and I look into it and it's false positive. Now that would bring a log saying Dolapo Monibi reviewed this incident and she marked it as false positive. So they want you to generate that log and say, okay, this is how, there's a log in place that shows that you people remediate the incidents and this person is responsible for that. So they want to see things from a comprehensive view, not like, not a small lens view, I guess. So I'm moving on to the next slide. So the next one is Digital Operational Resilience Act. And in this area, they're just ensuring that your organization has the abilities and tools to carry out vulnerability assessment. So they want to ensure that your organization carries out monthly vulnerability assessment or yearly vulnerability assessment. So any vulnerability assessment is related to penetration testing. They want to see that you carry it out. They want to see that, not just running vulnerability scans, but also remediating those risk or vulnerabilities that has been identified by the vulnerability tool. So vulnerability tools such as Corlys or Nessus vulnerability scanners are great tools for carrying out this activity. And like when you run a scan on these platforms or these technologies, they bring out like various vulnerabilities identified within your environment and their severity level. And they also kind of provide ways for you to remediate it as well. So they want to see that, when you're generating those reports, you've actually remediated that. So I think one of the things that happened to me one time when I was doing a PCI audit was I generated the report from the platform and I sent it to the auditor, and the auditor picked out a high vulnerability. Now, previously in my company, my managers would be like, we can sweep this under the rug. It's fine. Like, it's fine, because the people remediating the vulnerability, let's say the application team, they kind of take time in remediating it. So even if our vulnerability policy says, oh, for high risk, you have to remediate it within 5 days, and then low risk can be 30 days, and medium risk can be 2 weeks. Sometimes people do sweep things under the carpet. So when that happened, the auditors are like, can we see how you remediated this particular risk? And we did not have that. So we had to kind of provide like a justification as to why we haven't remediated it. We had to say, oh, we had priorities. This asset is, it has other controls in place, is isolated. We had to provide those type of justification. So, but in this context, DORA is saying, when you run a vulnerability assessment on certain critical assets within your environment, or just running a vulnerability assessment in your environment, you have to remediate that within a specific time frame based on your vulnerability management policy, for example. And when you run a penetration testing exercise, when you invite like an external or pen tester to run that, they would obviously identify certain vulnerabilities, right, within your organization. So even if it's low risk vulnerabilities, you still have to remediate that within a specific time frame based on your vulnerability management policy. So if you're creating your policy, you need to be mindful that, okay, if I'm saying high risk vulnerability is going to remediate it within 5 days, it has to be remediated within 5 days. That's what DORA is saying. So DORA is very strict when it comes to digital operational resilience testing. Also, DORA is saying that we're going to invite our own bodies to come and carry out a penetration testing of your environment. So, and that's called the threat-led penetration testing, which will be carried out every 3 years. And DORA has a framework, or EU in general has a framework called the TIBA EU framework. Is an intense threat intelligence-based ethical red teaming framework. So, like when we're carrying out pen testing exercises in our environment, we tend to do it on a test platform. But DORA's way of penetrating or testing or running a pen testing exercise on your environment is going through like a production environment, testing everything, acting as if, they're an ethical hacker, they're hacker, right? And they want to actually penetrate into your environment. And based on the results that they identify, it's either going to be pass or fail. So if they can break into your environment, that means you failed. But if they cannot break into your environment, that means you've passed the exercise. And this TIBA EU framework is also similar to the UK CBET framework. It's also more like an intense ethical red teaming exercise that takes place as well. And I think Bank of England carries out this exercise, but you can read on it if you want. So moving on is going to be the ICT third-party risk management. Like I said earlier on, third parties who provide softwares or infrastructure or like any form of support, they need to be compliant with DORA, and they need to carry out all these like assessments based on the DORA requirements. So risk management, incident response, digital operational resilience testing, and obviously they need to assess like their third parties that they're dependent on. So for example, if a third party use other contractors, they need to identify that as well. So this area is basically saying, you have to have a process in onboarding and offboarding your vendors. So you have to have an adequate due diligence process in place. And how you can carry it out is by, assessing the risk profile of that particular third party that you want to use. You have to ensure that, you have governance arrangements in place. So governance arrangement is saying, do you have an ICT third party policies and processes in place? management involved in this process? So, most organization can have like a third party process in place, but it's not like it's carried out regularly, or it's not carried out on all their vendors. So they can just specify okay, we're just going to carry out this activity for certain vendor just to, show compliance with a particular audit, like maybe PCI or ISO 27001, but not necessarily mean we will carry this activity for all our critical vendors. But DORA is saying your management has to be involved. They need to ensure that this process is actually in place. You also have to carry out a due diligence. So due diligence means like creating questionnaires, sending it out to the vendor, allowing them to fill those questionnaires. So based on on what they are offering us within the company, let's say they're offering us critical services like maybe your IT infrastructure, or maybe compliance, their compliance technology, people that would have access to KYC data of your customer, or using AML platforms, or financial platforms, any type of critical vendors, they need to carry out a due diligence. You need to assess them in terms of like their security posture. You need to retrieve their cyber compliance certificates as well, and ensure that they are compliant with certain regulatory standard like ISO 27001, SOC 2 Type 2 report, or PCI DSS if applicable. You need to ask them more questions. You need to also assess the platform. So if, for example, someone within the compliance team is using an AML platform, you need to ask questions. You need to liaise with the compliance team, like your internal point of contact. You have to ask them, what is the platform going to be used for? How is maybe access going to be controlled? Because most organizations can just buy or can just subscribe to one cloud provider, like SaaS platform, for example, and say everybody within the compliance team would have access to this platform. So that means one department would have one password, and that's wrong, because access control is breached in that way, because you cannot identify who has logged in because everyone's using one account. So we need to terminate one account per platform for a particular department. So these are things you assess. These are the risks you identify. Let's say, for example, there's no adequate audit log on the platform. You ask questions, you speak to the providers to provide like an alternative ways of doing this, whether you have to speak to the compliance manager to say, hey, we don't just want one subscription per department, can we get multiple subscription? Obviously that's going to increase the budget, and this is why management involvement has to be involved, so they understand the risk within the department and also the risk within third party as well. So third party life cycle, just ensuring that before you start or onboard a third party, there is a contractual agreement in place. So that contractual agreement has to stipulate the third party's responsibilities and obligations to laws within your organization and external laws as well. They need to be open-minded for your organization to carry out an audit, maybe on-site audit, or just whatever audits that you want to proceed with. They need to be able to provide cyber compliance certificates. You need to also stipulate that, hey, if your service has potential risk or threat, we have the right to terminate your contract. So these are things that you need to, stipulate in the contractual agreement. And you also have to have exit strategies, like how are we going to terminate these third parties? Does this third party have access to our environment? If they have, how, you have to have a process in place for removing their access or auditing their accesses. So these are things DORA is saying we should do. So it's not just it's very complex, it's very intense, and this is what they're expecting to show that you're addressing third-party risk within the organization. And DORA has a template called Register of Information, and Register of Information I'm going to show you towards the end of the section. It's basically a database inventory for keeping records of your third parties within your organization. So little things like the company's location, do they have subcontractors, information like that would be there, like when does the contract expire, when did you onboard the vendor. So I'm going to be showing that in a bit. And also DORA is also third-party risk management for DORA is also addressing, organizations that have, like, for example, if your organization is a group, right? But then in that group, there are various subsidiaries in that group. So, as a subsidiary, for example, if your subsidiary works in Europe, right? And maybe your group works in the UK, right? They are saying that if you outsource services, let's say IT infrastructure from your group or from your group level, your group too is indicated as a third party. So I'm using this as an example because my company, I work in Malta, and we have a group, a parent company who works in the UK. So my parent company is a third party to us because we use their infrastructure. So we use their platform, like the IT services, their team their team that provides services to us. So let's say a new user comes into our organization, my group level company has to onboard users. So they are providing IT services to us. So DORA is saying your group level 2 is a third party, and you have to have a contractual arrangement with your group and your subsidiaries. So it's more like an outsourcing process in place, or policies as well. So your group has to create a policy saying, hey, my subsidiary, we're going to be offering XYZ services to them, and you have to sign it. So DORA is saying, we're going to be assessing third parties also at group levels, if applicable within your organization. So moving on, this is information sharing. Information sharing is quite optional for financial entities. It's basically if your company wants to share incidents or information with various companies within Europe, so you have to opt for it. So let's say, for example, there's a particular threat you feel like, it will benefit people within Europe in the financial sector. You can opt for that, and then there's a process for sharing it. So, but at my company, we're not focusing on information sharing. So we're just focusing on the 4 pillars of DORA. But like I said, information sharing is optional. So moving on, I'm going to be talking about the DORA RTS, which is Regulatory Technical Standard and Thematic Review. So the Regulatory Technical Standard is basically a technical guideline on how to go about becoming compliant with DORA. So if you're familiar with, let's say, PCI DSS, right? PCI DSS has a document that shows how you become compliant with PCI DSS. So for example, the type of controls that should be in place. So this is what the RTS of DORA means. Like it basically states out all the controls, what they're expecting from you to become compliant with DORA. So I'm going to be sharing that in a bit. And thematic review is basically an assessment that will be carried out by someone who the EU has authorized to carry out the assessment. So it's an assessment where they kind of more like in preparation to DORA. So they carry out an assessment based on what your organization has in terms of controls, technologies, policies. They carry out the assessment to ensure that, your company is ready for DORA audit. And this thematic review has been carried out, I think, at the start of the year, because DORA would come into effect on the 17th of January 2025. And when the discussion of DORA came in place, it started to come in place in 2023. So DORA gave organizations 2 years to actually meet compliance in 2025. So thematic review is basically more like an external auditor coming to your organization to, assess your gaps, assess your controls, assess things within your organization. And if, for example, they identify that, you don't have this control in place, they would flag that up, and then you can go back and remediate that and put controls in place. So how to prepare for DORA? So first of all, one of my go-to things that I did this year in my workplace was to read the RTS, so read the guidelines in preparation for DORA. So we had to read the guidelines, we had to create a spreadsheet. Based on each guidelines, we had to identify it. And based on each guideline, we had to assess our environment. Do we have this policy in place? Do we have a solid risk management framework? Is our organization, or do we have management involvement in terms of, spearheading or being responsible for addressing risk within the organization? So you have to ask yourself the question, you have to check departments. This is not just IT related, but it involves the entire department, like from HR to finance to compliance to legal, because where legal comes in is legal is creating the contractual arrangement. They are ensuring that the ICT policy and also the ICT third-party policy highlight things like that in terms of third-party or risk management and addressing those type of risk. So you have to, for example, number one says you have to, ICT risk management practice. You have to assess your environment. Do we have a solid risk register in place? Do we have a risk committee steering meeting, and even if we have the meeting, what are the things discussed in that meeting? So DORA wants to see that. It wants to see that you're addressing ICT risk within that meeting. So second one is identify gaps based on RTS. So you have to identify those things. You have to review each requirement within the RTS based on the pillars of DORAs, and you have to then remediate that by implementing controls in place. You have to obviously encourage and drive improvement within your organization. So, once management is involved and you tell your management team that we don't have this technology in place, let's say we don't have a solid security awareness platform in place, management will be involved by signing off, the budget to implement or purchase tools like that to cover security awareness risk or to improve your security awareness. For example, maybe you don't have a solid SIM tool in place, management would be involved in ensuring that you have that to meet DORA audit. Obviously, monitoring regulatory compliance with DORA. So there's a DORA website that provides updates on the next stage. So after January 2025, there's a next step in terms of, how you can submit your evidences to DORA in terms of your register of information for third parties. So there's always an update. So you have to check the website. You have to subscribe to certain news outlets relating to DORA so that you can ensure that you close gaps relating to risk identified in DORA. You have to have a process for responding to an incident. Like I said earlier, you have to have policies in place, procedures. You have to inform users on how to do that. You have to probably have maybe most organizations, it just depends on how they want to do it. Maybe you can do a monthly bulletin just to tell people, hey, this is how you report to an incident, or these are various, incidents that has taken place out in the financial, sector that you should watch out for. More like security awareness as well for users. Outsourcing risk would be relating to third parties, always monitoring your third parties and, ensuring that your third parties can inform you of any breach or any incident in their environment so that you can check your platform and see that it does not affect you within within your organization. Testing the framework is just ensuring that, everything you've said that you have to meet DORA requirements is actually in place and is accurate, because you do not want to fail DORA audit. Yeah, so the next one is just more like practical ways to practical DORA assessment on policies and risk assessment and third-party management. So these are some of the policies that has been highlighted by DORA to ensure that an organization has. Why I kept this on this slide is because most companies, because these policies and procedures are quite a lot, so most companies tries to merge certain policies into their information security policy. Like, for example, because the information security actually sets the tone in an environment, in an organization, right? So most people just put like their data classification policy as a sub topic in their information security policy. They can put, identity management, they can put access control, just little information there. But DORA is saying, no, your information security policy should be standalone, should be high level, it should be standalone. However, you should have individual policies for each of these policies listed here. So they want to see a comprehensive ICT asset management policy. They want to see a comprehensive encryption and cryptography policy. Why I said this is because at my company, we have an information security policy. And when we carried out the thematic review, the auditors came back to us saying that why did we merge certain policies into one information security policy? And we said to them, we've already highlighted all the information DORA is requesting for. And she was like, no, you have to have individual policies for each. So when you're having a policy for, let's say, for example, your change management policy, you have to have a procedure for it. So a procedure is how the procedure is how to go about doing a particular policy. Like, how do you go about your change management policy, right? So maybe it will list like steps on how to carry out change, steps on how to respond to change, steps on how technologies or tools in place to carry out your change management process, like your CAB meeting, record keeping and things like that. So they want to see those type of things, for example. Yeah. But DORA is basically saying, you know what, you have to have those policies in place. Yeah. And the other one is also the register of information. I'm going to show you that in a bit. But this is just an overview, but I'm going to be sharing my screen to show that as well. The register of information. So this is the template DORA has created for register of information. And every organization will submit this template. It has various levels, like 1, 2, 3. It has to, I think, to 5. It actually has to 9. Right. So for example, if you look at the RT1, it's saying, you have to provide the name of the entity, their country, the type of entity, date of reporting. You have to provide that. And the RTS will tell you on how to go about like providing this information. But this is what you're going to be submitting in terms of like your ICT third party companies that that they provide services to you within your company. So you have to provide all this information here. So like I said earlier on, like they tell you everything, the value of assets based on the company, if applicable. Next one, if the company has a branch, you have to list that down. So let's say Microsoft, for example, where's the headquarters of Microsoft? What's their branch? What's their country of origin? So you need to list that out for every supplier that you use within your company. And this is what they're expecting you to submit as well. So basically, this is just an overview of the templates that DORA will be expecting you to submit in terms of like your third-party risk management. I think that's all for now. That's just a quick overview of DORA. I'll be taking questions now.
Wow, thank you very much, Dolapo. I think if you ask me, a lot of people would agree with me that we have learned a lot from what you have presented today. And I was even checking the chat area for you to see if there is any question from anyone, but not yet. They have not dropped any question, and nobody has raised his or her hand at the moment. But I've got some couple of questions for you.
Okay.
So I'm going to take it easy. So don't be afraid. It's not.
No problem.
It's not an exam session. You mentioned about the ESA, the authority that would come to various organizations to assess you. How long would they give you to prepare yourself for this assessment? Are you aware of that at the moment?
Yes. So, like I said, I didn't mention it at the start of, the DORA information, but I remembered and I mentioned it midway. So DORA came in place, I think 16th of Jan 2023, and it's going to come into effect 17th of Jan 2025. Now, DORA has given organizations 2 years to prepare for that. So they're expecting organizations to ensure that they have met all the requirements in the RTS from the 17th of Jan. So, but then DORA, because it's an EU or a European framework, they have various entities that they've nominated to carry out this assessment. So they've nominated various external auditors to actually carry out this assessment to meet DORA requirements.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. The question I was even asking is, if I'm prepared by January, like you are prepared now, my organization is prepared, then would they tell me, like, when they're coming, or by just sending the evidence, that is enough, or do they come to the organization to check whether what I claimed are actually in existence?
Yes. So I also mentioned the thematic review. Let me just...
Okay, that's thematic review that you did for your organization.
Yes.
Is that enough?
Yes. So the thematic review is like pre-audit, right?
Okay.
Because you've already had an engagement with this external body that DORA has nominated, right? So they have an idea of what is in your organization. So let's say, for example, they've conducted a thematic review from June to August, right? And they've conducted that review. Once that review is done and they provide feedback, the feedback is saying, oh, you need to improve XYZ within your organization. Now, you take that feedback and you start improving the feedback. Now, because you've engaged with the thematic auditors, like the people who have audited previously, they are aware of things within your organization already. So feedback, that's the feedback they're looking into, like the controls that they've identified that is currently missing. That's what you're going to look into. And then they submit the report to the ESA, the regulatory body. And once that's submitted and is approved, they would say that you've passed the audit.
Okay, nice. That's very good, because the reason I'm asking all these questions, these are the nuances that people here may not be aware of, because it's similar to the process that you have with, let's say, Cyber Essentials, ISO 27001, and a host of other standards that you have. So the question is, you mentioned one fantastic thing about vulnerability management there, whereby you would share the outcome, and you mentioned PCI DSS there, which as a follow-up, you have to do your pen testing. So that pen testing that you mentioned, reading that RTS, is it an assumed or presumed breach that they have to do it within your organization, or you give them external facing assets which they will try to breach them, or how do they say it in RTS? Do you understand my question?
Yes. So for the RTS one, the digital operational one, DORA is going to bring people which are, I think they're called threat-led penetration testing. So there are people within the EU, and they would use the Cyber EU framework as a guide for that. And it's basically testing like production environments within your company. So acting like an actual hacker that would penetrate into your company. So whether it is, they don't focus on the test environment, they're focusing on the live, like production environment. And if they can break into your company, obviously that would show that your company has failed the activity.
Well, there's still something that's not clear to me there.
Yeah.
You know, when you said if they're able to penetrate, I'm assuming you give them external facing asset. But on the other hand, the way it sounds to me is like, this is my production environment. You are in my organization, try and break it. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Or you give them external facing IP address, like I said, try it from outside.
Oh yeah, they're trying it from outside. Yes,
okay, cool. Okay,
yes.
So that's my question.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Because NCIC is doing the same thing for organizations in the UK, whereby you give them your external facing IP addresses, and they're monitoring them, and they can give a report on what they can see. So there are many things that is happening in the UK too. It's just that we don't give voices to them like the EU does. Another question, I think you clarified that, but we need to reinforce that so that people can understand. GDPR seems like what DORA is doing for the financial sector, because GDPR says if even you are in Africa, for instance, and you are European citizens' details, you have to be compliant with GDPR. That's the way it works. But in your own case, the DORA, what you have explained to us is that if perhaps my headquarters is in the UK and I have a branch in Ireland, for instance, and because my branch is that one there, I have to assume like I'm a third party giving a service to them and fill a document. So that's fantastic. So all these evidences, I'm assuming you have to present them to these specified assessors from the EU ESA, like we said earlier on. Is that the case?
Yes. And also, like, if your company is like a group level company that is based in the UK, for example, right? And they have like subsidiary or child company based in EU, right? Because the management will be in charge of, you know, the group level or like the entire organization. So the management has to spearhead, you know, ensuring that the company, like as a whole, is compliant with DORA. So whether they have various branches in Africa or whatever, but they have to be compliant with DORA, because DORA will still affect them in one way or the other.
Nice. That's a good one. So I have this one for you because you're a cybersecurity analyst. Okay. You know, we have PICERL, which we use for, that's a framework, the approach or steps for incident management, preparation, identification, You know that already. So I'm thinking, because we are talking about DORA now, which is focused on the financial area.
Yeah.
I'm sure they are not recommending any particular framework or process. They just want you to show them that you're following this expectation. Is that the case, or they recommend?
Yes, following the process, and they also have like a classification, like how they want you to classify things. I'm trying to find that in the RTS, but if I find it, I'll share it in a bit. But but they have like a process on how they want you to also classify like certain incidents and how to go about incident classification and responding.
Nice, that's very good, because you know, why I'm asking all these questions for, like I was repeating it, is just for people to understand that it's not difficult. It's just for you to understand the concept and what they're requesting from you and how to evidence them to this assessor for you to get the clarification. So is it a yearly thing? Is it a yearly affair? Or if I get one in 2025 now, when next are they coming to reassess me?
I'm not even sure about how they want to react, because it's still a new like framework, so everyone is just trying to meet that deadline. In terms of how they want to go about it, we're not sure, but the only one we are aware of is the penetration testing that will be carried out every 3 years. But I'm guessing it's probably going to be a yearly thing, because of the PCI DSS like framework, which is also a yearly thing.
Okay, nice. Thank you very much for answering my questions. I know we have Dolly Ijarotimi. I think she was raising up her hand before. I'm sorry I made you wait for too long because I had a lot of questions. Please, the floor is yours. Ask your question. Dr. Dolly. Another Dolapo. Are you still there? If you are speaking, you are still on mute. Okay, maybe she's not there. We have a question from Francis. What are the penalties for non-compliance? Okay, I think
Yeah, I
I
just checked the screen now. So the penalty for non-compliance is obviously monetary penalty. So you're going to be spending a lot of money just not meeting DORA compliance if you fall under that category.
Definitely. As you can see on the screen, she shared with us 2%, I think, of your global turnover, right?
Yes.
And then 1 million euros for individuals. So there you have it. So it's similar to what I was saying about GDPR too. Somebody said, any challenges faced on the DORA compliance journey? Might not need to go into detail. Yes, that's very good question.
Yes, definitely. Like, yes, everyone here compliance. So you might because you feel like my company right now, we are compliant with PCI DSS, ISO 27001, and SOC 2 Type 2. So when we realized we had to meet compliance with DORA, we were like, don't worry, we're there. But then when you realize that, based on the RTS, you're actually not there. So I didn't even realize that my company, we didn't even have a BIA inventory in place, like a business impact assessment. We haven't carried it out, And also when we used to carry out, let's say, for example, a tabletop exercise, we used to carry it out in the past, but we did not carry it out. So obviously, there's a lot of priorities right now in place because we need to meet DORA requirements. So, in terms of you think you have like a risk management framework or policy in place, when you then realize DORA is asking for very detailed information, like who is responsible for this, who are the management body, and even not just having management body, but assigning responsibility to those management body, you have to create a comprehensive policies, procedure in place for meeting DORA requirements. So there's a lot of challenges, and people just being reluctant as well to do things. Let's say, for example, you say, oh, could you provide this document within a week? People are taking time because maybe they go on holiday or they have other priorities in place, because in the financial sector, you have various audits. So not just DORA audits, we are also audited by PwC, we're audited by Bank of Malta. So things like this. So a lot of conflicting regulation. So those are the challenges. Just, I think a lot of workload, I guess, would be the challenge.
Well, what I would say is, and I say this to people in the cyber world, busy is good. Because our industry says there's a lot for us to do, so we cannot complain. So Dolapo, don't complain, please. So, okay, Dolly, the floor is yours. Your question, please.
Thank you very much, Dolapo. You've been quite helpful. Just a quick two questions. One, do you think that DORA could be used in other industries? Is it so specific that it can only be used by, I know it's meant for the financial companies, but do you think that other kind of industries might be able to use it? And the second one is, you talked about writing the policies and the procedures and things. Is it something that someone would have to start afresh each time? Or is there room to ask your colleagues, your friends, have you written this kind of policies before? Can I work with yours? Can I modify yours? Or every time you've got to start from the beginning,
Okay, so to touch on the policy bit, so let's say, for example, your organization does not have any policy in place based on what DORA is requesting for. Obviously, you have to start the policy from scratch. And I'm gonna try and show you one document, the RTS relating to the expectation of the policy. So the RTS has information based on, let's say, for example, your identity management policy. So DORA is telling you what they need to see in that policy. So that would give you a guideline to craft the identity management policy. that will help you in creating those policies. So it's not like, oh, you're blindsided, like you're in the dark in terms of like trying to create a policy, you're trying to figure, but DORA will give you a guideline. Oh, this is what they're expecting you to have in this particular policy. And obviously, once you meet compliance with DORA, so in every organization, policy has to be reviewed every year. So based on the business, based on maybe risk identified in the business. So let's say, for example, you create a policy in Jan 2025. The next time you review a policy would be January 2026. So if there's no, if you don't have any changes to add to the policy, you can just say, okay, policy has been reviewed as a whole, but there's no change. So yeah, relating the industries that would be applicable to that DORA will apply to, obviously financial entities, insurance companies. I provided the information on the presentation slide, and also like third-party companies as well, or service provider companies. I think once DORA comes in place and maybe worldwide can see how, financial entities in DORA are doing in terms of cyber resilience, I think slowly people will start adopting like more of the pillars into what is required for various industries, I think.
Thank you very much, Dolapo, for answering that question succinctly. The only thing I wanted to add for Dolly is that, every year it is expected in cybersecurity for you to review your policy, because there might be something that has changed within the sector, which you need to add. So you don't have to wait for DORA to ask for your evidences. So it's a good practice for you to review your policy every year and make sure you add whatever that has changed. Because if you remember, in the past, 8-character password used to be enough. But these days we are talking about passphrase. So it does two things for you. It's easier to you remember your password, and then it makes it harder for the bad actors for them to break your password. So that's just an example. So it's a good practice for you to review your policy every year as well. You don't have to wait for DORA to come knocking. All right. Eva Saka, please don't sack us.
That's all right. I just needed to ask a question. With regards to the guidelines and, I believe it's the checklist that is required by DORA. Is it on an open platform on the website, or once you register, then DORA gives you access to that platform?
Yeah, so everything is online. Maybe after the meeting, I would send the various links on the platform so everyone can have access to it. But yeah, it's open source, so everyone can have access to the...
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Another question I have you heard about NIS2?
I know NIST, but I'm not head of NIS2.
Okay, NIS2, we all need to look out for that too, because your company is in Europe. It's about building resiliency in network too, but it's beyond just financial. It covers everything. So be on the lookout for that one too. So it's called NIS2 directive. And why I'm asking that is, I asked about NIST earlier on. So a questioner asks, how has other third-party management frameworks like NIST 853 helpful in achieving DORA? Also, how much does legislation delve into the wider supply chain management of the banks? So those are two questions in one. Answer the ones you can. I can help you if need be.
Wait, I don't understand the other question, which is the legislation diving into a wider supply.
I think if you just explain that third-party bit, that's what he wants to know. Because supply chain is more or less dealing with third parties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of I don't know about the NIST publication, the 853, but DORA has the RTS, and the RTS provides the expectation in terms of how they want you to go about meeting the requirements for third-party management. Maybe similar to the NIST one, maybe they drew some inspiration from NIST, but what I've done in my workplace is just look into the RTS so that we can align with DORA. And obviously when we're creating the policy, we also looked into the RTS, but also got inspiration from or took some information from various platforms like ISO 27001, the controls relating third party, the expectation.
Go on, I can hear you.
Yeah. So basically I just the RTS provides an in-depth information on how to go about it.
Of course, fantastic. For the NIST 800-53 that I mentioned, it contains some set of controls, and it was based on Obama's directive when he was the president then. So that is for the classified aspect of the industry, maybe defense, I can say for sure. They now have 800-171, which is for those supplying services to these, so they call them non-classified. So they have list of controls. That's what he's talking about. And that's the question I asked you earlier. So I don't think they are related, because for that one, they go into more details about 23 or 20. I've forgotten the number now. Apologies for that. So that's what is referencing. But you have mentioned it. They have their own expected controls as well for you to attestate those things that you claim that you have. So like I said, these things are not too different, but just that every area is just trying to make sure people or the leadership in various sectors, they sit up and take responsibility. Because like GDPR, the power used to be with these companies when you give them your data, but the EU took away that power from them and gave it to us, the customers, using these companies. So that's just a difference. And now they want to keep an eye on the financial sector. That's what DORA is all about. So I hope that is clear for everybody. Any other question? I
just want to share my screen in terms of like the policy, for example.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is the RTS, and I just want to show you one section of the RTS, which is asset management. So they're saying your asset management policy. So this is what DORA is saying in terms of the information they expect you to have in your asset management policy. So they're saying, they're saying the policy on management of ICT shall, require monitoring management of the life cycle of an ICT. So it depends on your own interpretation of, life cycle of an asset. And then they've kind of further broke it down into, you have to have, unique identifier for your ICT asset. So you have to have an asset inventory, right? And you have to check your asset inventory and check, what is this asset? What's the host name? Where is it stored? Where is it located? Who's responsible for this asset? Who used this asset? The IP addresses. So these are things. And when you're creating your policy, you're linking or referring to your ICT asset inventory in your policy, right? So these are the information here. So they even have information on, encryption and cryptographic controls, like things they're expecting you to have. For example, rules on encryption of, what are your rules? What type of encryption standard do you use in terms of your data at rest, in transit, controls in place. So the RTS is very detailed. So if you look into the RTS, I think you can create and meet compliance with DORA based on information there.
Thank you very much for the additional details. On this note, I just want to thank you, Dolapo, for that beautiful presentation and taking your time to answer our questions. Really appreciate that. For those that are not aware of this session that we're having live, a day in the life of a cybersecurity professional, we have others that have come before here. Some of them are in this session. We have Clifford, we have Mutoli, and those of others that have not seen their names here. So if you go to our YouTube page there, subscribe to it, you can see all our other videos. People, they've presented various areas in cybersecurity. Dolapo presented DORA today. We have had Tayo, who came to present about NIST. You can watch it, subscribe to our channel, you see all this fantastic information we have. So our plan is to meet again in another fortnight, but before you go, normally we do an announcement to make sure we carry along with whatever that we're doing. And I'm going to show you that shortly. Please just pardon me, just give me a few seconds. I should be able to show it to you. Okay, Dolapo, stop sharing. Okay, that's good. Where is this?
Because I have some questions on the chat meeting.
I'll take it, don't worry. I'll take the question. Okay, so as usual, just to let you know, we have our training coming up in January So that's the first session that we're going to be having. Take note of that. Those of us that are interested in cybersecurity training, if you want to come into cybersecurity, it's starting January 11th. And one of our brothers in the community is the owner of this Velo Remit. We are pleading if you can help them to grow their business and then use our promo code, which they'll give to us. And that's what I want to mention to us as an announcement. And another point that we are going to be talking about in fortnight is looking at exploring future-proof careers. So look out for that in that fortnight, which is going to be in January 2025. We want to use that to start the new year. So look forward to that. We want to talk about that. And without any further ado, I want to say maybe you screenshot it, take note of that before I go to the question that somebody has. I've not seen a new question here. Shay, what's the new question? I think I've answered the question. It's about NIST?
No. The one about the difference between GDPR and the DORA. And also in DORA,
no, the person said it's similar to GDPR penalties. Was anybody asking any difference?
No, not the penalties, like the pillars. Is it like DORA is like an in-depth of that GDPR regulation?
I don't know if they can hear you well. I'm struggling to make out what you're saying.
Can you hear me?
Ask again, what's your question?
Okay. Is GDPR, is DORA an advancement of GDPR?
No. They are two different things. GDPR is about it's about PII. That's what the American people call it, PII. Personally identifiable information. You have to identify where you store them within your organization and then make sure they have the right controls. Everything. The elephant in the room is the controls that you have. So you talk about anonymization, pseudonymization, encryption, and all that. That's what GDPR is all about. But DORA now, from what Dolapo told us today, if I listen well, I want to show her that I'm a good student, is focused on the financial sector and our expectation, which she has taken us through, that they want you to tell them it's about risk management, incident management, third-party risk management, and all that. Dolapo, did I try?
Perfecto.
So that's what she told us today. So there are two different things. I hope that clarifies your question, Shay.
Yeah, I know. And the second one is it applicable to other countries when it is implemented in January? Is it going to be applicable like in America as well?
Like what she said, again, I'll help her to answer this question to show her that we listened, is that, let's say your head office is in America, but you have a presence in the Europe. So that's where it concerns you. You act like a third party giving a service to that your base, your branch in Europe, which must be part of that third party risk management she mentioned. Is that okay?
I think you mentioned Europe. So me, I was now taking it out of Europe to the United States. So that was my answer.
Okay. I think we have answered your question. So everybody, thank you very much for joining. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time. In advance, we wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And thank you for your patronage over the years. We really appreciate your time and effort in this community. Let's continue digging the well before we become thirsty. So we appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Bye for now.